before the first kingdom, before the pharaohs, before the pyramids. More than 7,000 years ago, the Nile was already shaping the destiny of a people. Long before history recorded their names, prehistoric communities learned to survive, farm, build, and work together along the banks of one of the world's greatest rivers. This is the forgotten story of the first steps toward one of history's greatest civilizations. Welcome to ancient Egypt, before the pharaohs. Long before Egypt existed, the Nile flowed through a silent world of desert, stone, and untouched wilderness. Around the river, endless deserts surrounded a narrow green valley where nature quietly protected every form of life for the countless generations. Wild animals gathered along the river, following ancient paths that led them to fresh water and safety every single season, year after year. The river gave every creature clean water, rich plants, and fertile ground, becoming the heart of life in this harsh land. Small groups of people slowly followed the Nile, searching for food, fresh water, and shelter before the sun disappeared each evening. They carried simple stone tools, carefully hunting wild animals and gathering useful plants beside the life-giving waters of the Nile. Working together, they hunted wild animals and gathered edible plants, bringing food back to their families beside the Nile. Entire families traveled beside the Nile, carrying their belongings as they searched for safer places to begin a new journey. As the sun slowly faded, they quietly watched the Nile, grateful for the life and peace it faithfully provided every peaceful day. Small seasonal camps offered shelter beside the Nile, where families gathered around warm fires to peacefully rest before moving again. The Nile overflowed with fish and thriving plant life, creating a rich natural world that supported countless forms of life. Beyond the fertile riverbanks, endless deserts stretched in every direction, making the Nile a lifeline for countless living creatures. As gazelles approached the Nile to drink, patient hunters quietly waited, watching every movement from a safe distance. Hunters carefully prepared simple spears beside the Nile, shaping each weapon with basic stone tools before the next hunt began. Temporary riverside camps brought families together, where reed shelters and cooking fires supported their daily lives beside the Nile. Near the Nile, prehistoric children played safely, while their family camps stood quietly among the reed shelters behind them every day. Families returned to the same riverside camp each season, choosing the familiar Nile location that had served them well before. More families chose to remain near the Nile camp, finding comfort in a place that continued to provide for their daily needs each season. Along the peaceful Nile, a small human settlement slowly began to form, bringing families closer together beside the river. As the sun set over the Nile, a small prehistoric community marked the quiet beginning of a new way of life together for generations. Prehistoric Egyptian families returned to their familiar Nile camp, where simple reed shelters stood beside the river throughout each returning season. A prehistoric family paused beside familiar Nile landmarks, their lives deeply connected to the river through every passing season. The Nile's seasonal waters flowed steadily, shaping prehistoric Egypt through every season with quiet rhythm. Prehistoric hunters quietly observed migrating animals near the Nile, following nature's ancient rhythms across the fertile landscape. Prehistoric families fished the shallow Nile waters, where abundant fish provided a steady source of daily nourishment throughout each season. Beside a Nile campfire, village elders passed their knowledge to younger generations, preserving traditions through shared experience. A prehistoric Nile Valley family taught essential survival skills, preparing younger generations for life beside the river through shared tradition. The prehistoric community gathered beside the Nile as elders shared knowledge, strengthening bonds across each new generation for years to come. Prehistoric observers carefully studied the Nile's changing water levels, learning from each passing season beside the river. At sunset, a small Nile settlement gathered beside reed shelters, where families ended another peaceful day together in harmony. A growing prehistoric community flourished along the Nile, with reed shelters standing beside the peaceful riverbank every season. Prehistoric families returned to their familiar Nile camp, where familiar shelters welcomed them beside the ever-flowing river once again. Improved reed and mud shelters stood beside the Nile, creating stronger and more durable homes along the peaceful riverbank. Prehistoric families stored food in woven baskets, protecting valuable supplies for their growing Nile community through changing seasons. Prehistoric people observed the fertile land after the Nile floods, recognizing the rich soil spread across the riverbank before them. Early farmers carefully planted seeds beside the Nile riverbank, trusting the fertile soil to nourish future harvests for everyone. Prehistoric farmers carefully examined their poor crops, learning from the difficult growing conditions beside the life-giving Nile River. An early successful harvest brought prehistoric families together, gathering crops beside the fertile Nile with growing confidence. The prehistoric Nile settlement continued expanding as a larger population built stronger homes and a more organized community. As the sun set, the growing Nile community marked the symbolic beginning of Egypt's future civilization along the river. A permanent farming community flourished beside the Nile, where riverside homes became the foundation of everyday prehistoric life. Farming families lived beside the fertile Nile fields, while reed and mud homes formed a thriving prehistoric riverside community for generations. Children ran beside the Nile River, their joyful movement reflecting everyday life in prehistoric Egypt's growing riverside community. The growing prehistoric Nile village featured organized homes and storage areas, reflecting an increasingly structured and stable way of life. Early specialization emerged within the Nile village as farmers and craftsmen strengthened the growing prehistoric community together. A prehistoric potter carefully shaped clay vessels, supporting everyday life within the authentic Nile settlement through skilled craftsmanship. Villagers filled pottery containers with grain, preserving valuable food supplies for their prehistoric Nile settlement through careful preparation. Healthy prehistoric families thrived within the Nile settlement, building a strong and enduring community through everyday life together. Village elders passed their knowledge to younger generations, preserving essential skills throughout the prehistoric Nile community for centuries. As the sun set, the developing Nile village revealed permanent homes, fertile farming fields, and a thriving riverside community. Multiple Nile villages spread along the riverbanks, with reed and mud homes forming connected prehistoric communities across the valley. Separate Nile villages shared similar lifestyles, preserving common traditions across prehistoric Egypt's growing riverside communities. Reed boats traveled along the Nile, transporting people and valuable goods between distant prehistoric villages throughout the fertile river valley. Pottery, baskets, fish, and tools were exchanged along the Nile, strengthening trade between neighboring prehistoric communities every season. A skilled prehistoric craftsman carefully created pottery and tools, supporting everyday life across the growing Nile riverside community. A prosperous prehistoric Nile village featured larger homes and organized food storage areas, reflecting a growing and thriving community. Villagers worked together near the Nile fields, building new structures and carrying supplies to strengthen their growing riverside settlement. A respected village leader addressed the community, sharing guidance that helped unite the growing prehistoric Nile riverside settlement for future generations. Village council members gathered near the Nile settlement, discussing important community matters without kings or royal authority. By 5000 BCE, a thriving Nile village stood beside fertile fields and storage buildings, marking the beginning of civilization. For centuries, the Nile had nurtured small communities along its banks, but history was about to change forever. A new era was approaching, the age of kings, the age of kingdoms, the age of the pharaohs.